So you're thinking of remodeling your bathroom. A couple years ago, my wife and I remodeled 2.5 bathrooms in our house. 2 full bathrooms with showers and tubs, and 1 half bath. And we saved a ton of money by doing it ourselves, probably $20,000 or $30,000. Although it wasn't easy, it took a lot of time. We made a lot of mistakes. We learned along the way. We're not experts. We have most tools, but we did have to borrow some tools like a tile saw from friends. And I did a spreadsheet of all the things we bought, where we bought it from, whether you're going to buy Lowe's or Home Depot, the cost of everything, where you can save money. We actually bought the toilet and the tile from a home auction that was nearby our house. We saved money there. And just everything you need to know. I tried to record it, and I tried to record the mistakes I had made. So hopefully you can watch it and see those common mistakes you can run into, and hopefully you can do it right the first time yourself. But whether you're going to watch all these videos or just bits and pieces and just the parts that you need, hopefully you can learn from them and get what you need and do it right. So good luck.
I started by measuring all the sides, and I drew it out on Google SketchUp. If you want to see that drawing, I'll put it on my blog. We know it's going to be a 3x5 on either side, and in the middle we're going to have to use 2 sheets of that hardy backer. So we need 4 sheets in here. But before we get into all that, I'm going to take down this bar, take off the door, get everything out of the shower in this room because it's going to get dusty, so that's the first thing. Okay, so I have everything taken out of the bathroom. I have the shower curtain down, the shower rod, the door, everything taken out. The tub is protected. I put towels down, put masking tape around it and a sheet over it, so I'm ready to take out the tiles, and I'm just going to use a hammer and a chisel with safety glasses and just go around and rip everything out. I know that the hardy backer is 5 feet tall, and I measured it's about 2 inches above this, so it doesn't matter if I hurt the drywall a little, up to 2 inches. I was going to score it with a utility knife, but I have some room, so I'm hoping I won't mess it up. So ready to start hacking it out. Well, that wall was a little heavier than I thought. I thought I could just rip it down and slowly lower it down. It was pretty heavy. But I quickly got almost one side of the wall down rather than taking little chunks out at a time. Although I think I got to put some gloves on that. I cut my hand on the sharp tile, I think. I didn't realize it until I saw it on the tile. So I'm going to put some gloves on. It's pretty sharp. But one wall is almost done. Well, after doing a portion of the tub so far, I've learned a couple things. One, you need gloves. I think I ended up cutting my hand. There's this sharp metal mesh behind the concrete board, and it's really sharp. Next is you need a really good protection on the tub because all these tiles are falling, big chunks of concrete and stuff. So that's all falling on. You need really good padding. I have just towels and a sheet, and I think I wish I had more. And the next is, the system I've come up with is nothing pretty. You just take a hammer, you beat a grid through the tile, through the cement board, and through the mesh. You just pound around each 2x4, going around, ripping through the metal, and then just ripping it off. And you don't want anything bigger than, 2x2. Beyond that, and it's heavy and it's falling, so that's kind of the system I've come up with. There's probably something better, but that's what I've been doing for the last 3, and it seems to be going quick. I'm not having to take individual tiles off, I'm just ripping it all down. Just like that. So well, I'm all done with the demo, taking down the concrete board and the tile. It took about 4 hours, or an afternoon. 2 other things before I forget. First is I have a hammer drill, and you definitely need a pretty good screwdriver, like powered screwdriver or hammer drill to get these in. I don't know if a typical or a 14 volt just drill driver would work. So a hammer drill is, you definitely need it to put these screws in with a lot of pressure. The other thing is, like I said, we were worried about any leakages through the cracks and the joints and when we do the inset shelf. So I'm going to do silicone, 100% silicone around everything, and this gap up here and all these joints after I put up all the concrete board, just to make sure it doesn't leak. And then I did have to go buy hydrophobic paint. I think it's Red Guard or something. There's a whole bunch of different brands, but we're going to use it when we do the inset shelf. We're going to use it on all the joints, on the screw heads. It was $50 for a 1 gallon thing, which kind of sucks, but just to make sure it doesn't leak, we're going to go over all the joints and seams, and we have the mesh tape. So I've talked to different people. Some people say they don't use it. We've seen videos of people using it, and we figure it's better than redoing it all. So that's the last step after we put up the 2 more of the boards on the end. Alright, here's the carbide tipped cutter they suggest using. It doesn't dull as quickly as a utility knife. I don't know if you can see it, but that was after 1 cut. It's pretty dull. So I got this, and it does hold an edge a little better. I'm also going to use just an angle grinder, and this still only gets about halfway through the board, doing several passes. After that, I'm just trying to pop it and split it, and I'll clean the bottom edge. Hopefully it doesn't tear too much. typical with this job, I kind of screwed up. I was cutting notches out for the lip, for the hardy backer to go over that lip, and I came to this one and the tub is about a 1/2 inch off the wall. And I called my friend and he said, you shouldn't put the hardy backer over that lip. You should set it on it. So I got to take both of these off. Instead of cutting that little 1-inch cutout, I'm just going to cut the whole bottom off and put them back on the wall so they're sitting on the lip of that tub. I talked to some of the videos I saw, they showed it, you know, just off the tub, but I think that was with a rubber skirt that hung down. So I got to take both of these off and I got to set it on that edge rather than notch around it, because otherwise it's kind of bowed a little over that tub lip. So I get to take both of these boards off, go downstairs, cut the bottom off, put them back up. So back to the beginning. Alright, it's been a couple of days and I haven't had time to work on putting up the concrete board, but the problem I left off with was this side. The tub, the lip here, is sticking out too far. It's a lot further than the other sides. So what I have to do is cut strips of wood, nail them to these studs so that the 2x4s stick out a little further. I have to cut 3/16 or 3/8, 2/8, and then 1/8 for these three. So I'm going to go down to the table saw, rip a 2x4 for these 5 boards, nail them on, and then I can put the concrete board up and it'll be flush and sitting on the lip of the tub. Well, that's all the boards in. Now I just gotta put the concrete board up and see if it fits. A little bit off, but it's a lot more flush to the edge here than it was before. Alright, so all the boards are attached, and I even attached a board down here, and there's one on that side that could wrap around the tub. I talked to my friend and he said that we should be good. We could put the tile adhesive and tile right on this, but I'm a little bit nervous that it might leak, so I'm going to take some caulk, just cheap, you know, $1, $2 tube of silicone caulk, and I'm going to go down all the seams, and I'm going to put the joint tape, and I have that hydrophobic paint. We're going to paint in all the joints, and I'm even going to do, I have the little flap of the cloth down there. I'm going to put a silicone around that, basically make everything waterproof that I can, just in case I messed up, because I haven't done this before, so that it doesn't leak behind it. So that's what I'm going to do next, and then tomorrow, or whenever I get around to it, we'll start tiling. Alright, well, I am now just finishing up a step that I'm not even sure I have to do, and that is I caulked all the joints with silicone caulk. I put this mesh tape on it, and then I have a small bucket of thin set. I'm just going to fill in all the gaps in the corners, maybe cover some of the screw heads. I don't know if I have to do it because we're going to be putting that tile adhesive over everything anyways, but like I said, it's still my first time. I'm not sure, so might as well, it can't hurt. So I'm just going to fill all these joints in. Okay, you can see that I put the red hydrophobic paint on the walls. I covered everything and I did the joints, at least 2 coats. I'm going to do a whole nother coat over everything, but before I do that, I wanted to fix, I have holes around the tub here and on that side. It's where the lip of the tub ends, and I could cut little pieces and put those in and then caulk around them, but what I'm going to try to use is this Great Stuff foam. There's the red and the blue. I probably should use the blue, but I had this in the basement, so I'm going to fill in all these gaps, and then that will give me something to add silicone in front of that and try to make it all waterproof. I was trying to think of ways either to use wood or more concrete board, or one side does have 2x4s that I could attach it to. This side, there's a gap of 3.5 inches behind it, so there's nothing really to attach it to. So I'm just going to try a little bit of this at a time, fill it in. If it bubbles out, I'll wipe it down, and then that will give me something to at least attach a board to, and then silicone, or just put a lot of silicone right on top of it. So I want to make this area waterproof. And then once that's done, another coat of the paint, and we're ready to put the tile on. Okay, well, I have gone around and filled in every gap I could find with that Great Stuff foam. Let it harden, then I used a hacksaw, sawed off all the expanded pieces. So I have it all the way around the top, along the bottom, especially around the tub where that flange ends and the tub curves. I filled in all of that, sanded it smooth. So now I'm going to go back with 100% silicone and waterproof everything I can, just in case I screw up on the tile. I know the entire tub with the paint, all the joints, everything's waterproof, so hopefully it doesn't leak. Okay, so I started to do the layout and drawing line work on the wall to put on the tiles, and here's the tile I'm going to be using, and we're going to be doing a diamond pattern, so it'll be vertical like that. Here's the spacers, the mastic or the adhesive, tile adhesive, and I have a 1/4 inch trowel, but one problem I have is the tub is not level. It's tipped toward the front and toward the back a little. So when I drew that line level around all the tub, some areas you can see if I put it on its end, it's right up to that top line almost, and that's right on the tub. But if I take it over here and put it on the tub, you can see it's well under both of those lines. So I can't caulk a gap of that distance. I'll have to set it up on that lower line, which is why I drew it. So it'll be about 1/8 to 1/4 inch off the tub. But in order to get it on this side, on that lower line, I'm going to have to take off a little bit of some of these tiles on this wall, and as I check all through here. So I'm going to have to go in the basement, go down to the grinder and knock off the corner. I'm going to figure out how many, maybe 8 or 10 of these I'll have to take off so that it's off the tub and everything's level.
Well, I'm all set to start putting the tiles on. I have the tiles that I notched the corners off, and I had to do it on these half tiles too, because those are going to be in the middle. So I have 9 of those. I have all my tiles here that I took out of the boxes, and I mixed them up so I don't get any similar patterns. Alright, so I'm all set. I have my first tile that I'm going to use. I'm going to put it on that vertical and horizontal lower line. I'm going to work left and right off that, and I'll be using the short tiles in between just on this bottom row, and we'll see how it goes. Well, this weekend we are going to try and finally finish the tiling. I haven't had the saw. I've been borrowing it for a while and I had to give it back, so we haven't had it for a couple weeks. So this weekend we're going to borrow the saw and finally put all the tile in. And the reason why I've put the first row in, but we need it for the second row. As you can see, all these pieces need to be cut. The corners need to be cut off all the way up. So, and we can't go up anymore because we need to check our level as we're going around. So we're going to get the saw, cut all these pieces, do the first, second, third, and just work our way up. We'll try to get the inset shelf in, and that's how we're going to go up just below 1 full tile width, measure, cut out the board. We'll see how that goes, and hopefully by the end of this weekend we'll have it all done, so I'll try to take some pictures as we go along. So here's what it looks like at the point we're at. One of our walls is pretty much done except the cutout for the shelf. We're going to do this next. And I just finished cutting out all the pieces for around the faucet, and that took a while, but now that that's done we can just go right up the wall in all directions. Well, it's the second day of really putting up the tile, and so far it's gone a lot better today than it was yesterday. I did notice right away I was putting the spacers in, but I always had to, we found out later, I had to check the line, the grout line, to make sure it was lined up. There were some jogs in it, and luckily I think with our tiles it won't be too obvious, but I assumed that because we had the spacers in everything was fine, but really I should have been checking that line, especially since we're on a diagonal. If we were doing a typical 90-degree corners and tiles, it would have been more obvious, but since we're doing that diagonal grout line, it wasn't that obvious. And just to show you, here's how I've been doing the tiles. I can cut it out like this on the tile saw, and then I'm taking a chisel, I'm scoring along this, and then I'm just holding it up in the air and tapping it here with a hammer, and that piece breaks off pretty well so far. So okay, I have it scored, and I'll try to show you how I've been knocking the piece out. I have it scored on the front and the back, and that's it. It comes right out. Well, here's what it looks like so far. Normally we're putting the tile adhesive right on the back of the tile, but we get to a certain point when we're doing the thin glass accent tiles here. We put it right on the wall and we're going to stick to it. It's still a problem checking to make sure these lines are straight. We'll get one direction and then another direction it'll be zigzag, but after this we'll get it looking just like this side here, where we go up another whole tile and then the top.
These are the easy sides because they're an entire half piece and an entire half piece. The middle, we did the mirror image down the center. So we're ending up with these weird tiny pieces and 75% pieces. So there's going to be a lot more cutting for this middle wall. So that's going to take some time. But we worked on it probably 3 hours last night, probably 3 hours today. So here's how far we are. It's probably going to be another 3 or 4 hours to finish that middle section and then attach the shelves here where we have the cutouts. Okay, so here's the point that we're at after last night and the better part of today. We finished up this wall and then we moved over to here. We got both sides, and these, like I said, were the easy ones because we have an entire half piece and an entire half piece. This middle wall, the mirror image, we're going to have to do a lot more cutting, but we ran out of spacers, so we're done for the day. So tomorrow I'm going to keep going up until we get to the point where we can put in the shelf, go up to where we can put the accent tile, and as I'm going, I guess I'm going to cut all the tight little corner pieces. So that's going to take at least a day by myself, if not longer, but hopefully we'll get it done. And then we can start grouting 3 days after. Well, we finally finished putting the tile in. It took a lot longer than we thought. We screwed up a lot, but hopefully it looks okay. There's a lot of mistakes that we can see because we did it. Like I said, the grout line's not lining up. The mirror image above the accent tile, this one's smaller than this one. We had to cut it in half. Hopefully no one will notice it, but it looks alright when we're all done. But as we're doing it, we learned a lot for the other shower we're going to do, is what we're saying. So all we have left is to wait 3 days, and then we'll do the grout. We'll also do the colored grout caulk in the corners, and when that dries, we'll put in the shelves, and then we'll caulk along that. And then we're going to use white silicone caulk along the outer edge and where it comes in contact with the tub, and we have that colored caulk grout for everything else in the corners. So we have to wait 3 days. We'll do the grout, then we'll seal it, put the shelves in, and hopefully it will be done, and we get to do it all over again for our other shower. That's another part. So it's been 2 days since we finished putting the tile up, and I'm still going to wait another day because there's some areas, like right on here, where we put it on pretty thick, a lot thicker than a 1/4 inch. And I noticed some of them were still little. You can move them, wiggle them around. So I'm just taking a wet cloth, going around wiping up all the tile adhesive that got on the tiles, especially on these glass tiles. Anything that can show up before we grout. We'll probably do it the next free day, either tomorrow or the next day. try to grout and fill in and try to cover up any mistakes if possible. So that's it. So just a wet rag and maybe a plastic trowel and clean it all off. Alright, I have the grout in the tub, I have the rubber float, and like I said, I'm going to work from the bottom up to try to minimize stuff falling down. And I'll just do this wall, try to get as much as I can, then work my way around. And I mixed it a little thicker than I did on the floors. The floors, it could be runnier. This time I mixed it a little bit thicker. And I'm just going to work it up the wall. Try to get it in all those grooves from every different angle. And the key here is to really use the end of the float to work it in. And you want to see the grout bulge out of these cracks here. So you move it to the end. You should see the grout squeezing out of there the more you work it in. And that's how you know you got it all the way in there. Okay, so we have all the grout on this wall, and it's probably not ready to be wiped off yet, but I'm just testing to get a look and see if how dry it is in the corners, and I can still see it's a little wet, so I'm just very lightly trying to get all these high spots off. And I have 3 of these sponges in a bowl of water, and you gotta switch frequently, as you can see. So I'm gonna wait probably another 5-10 minutes and let it dry a little more in these grout joints. Because it's dry here on the surface where it's real thin, but the joints themselves are still a little damp. Well, it's been about almost an hour on this wall, and we're starting to peel up some of the masking tape. We probably should have done it a little sooner because the grout is starting to dry, and if you can see, there's a small line where the masking tape and the grout was. Hopefully it's not too hardened and we can get the sponge out and get that line off. It's coming off so far. If we waited another half hour or so, we might have had to use a plastic putty knife, but so far it's coming up, and we're glad we taped it off because otherwise this grout would have gotten in all these little pores and everything. So just gotta wet it, hopefully get rid of that line, and we'll be good. was a long day, but we finally have all the grout done. And with the masking tape, we had to peel each one of those pieces off, and then we used a plastic trowel and a metal trowel to kind of smooth out the seams that were made from the tape. And I've just been wiping it down continuously, trying to get any little bit that's sticking up proud above the tile. I probably should have mixed it a little runnier than I did. I mixed it a little dry and it set up too quick, and that made for a lot more scraping. We should have, when I did the tile on the floor, I was able to wipe it up as I was going, but with the masking tape, you couldn't really tell, and it kind of set up a little too quick, so that made for a lot more wiping with the plastic trowel. But we're pretty much done. There's one or two spots we have to go back. We're going to hang these shelves with the tile adhesive, and then we're going to take the caulk that's colored to match this grout, and we're going to do these inside corners, and then we'll take white silicone caulk and go around the tub. After that, we're going to wait a couple days, and then we're going to seal it with the sealer we have so that it's waterproof, and that should be it.
Well, we're ready to install the shelf. We have two shelves in both corners of the shower, and here's the shelf we have. It's one from Home Depot. It looks like this in the box. It matches our tile really well, and we already have left the cutouts for where we're going to attach it. It's got this little flange on either side. We're going to put the tile adhesive, the same tile adhesive we used to put the tiles on the wall, put it on all the edges, set it in place. And then we're going to hold it with, I'm not sure if we're going to use masking tape or this duct tape, and we're going to attach it to the wall. It should stay pretty well, you can see, but the tape is just to hold it in place for a day or so. I think a tiny little pitch downward so the water drains out. It's already kind of built in, but it doesn't sit really well, but we're going to fill the cracks with grout after the tile adhesive dries. Okay, here's the tile adhesive on the shelf. I'm not sure if I put too much or not enough, if I should put it on the side, but I put a lot on there. And I better get the tape ready. And squeezing it in there. I don't know if I like that. No. That was probably good. And I think it's at too much of an angle, so I'm going to lift it up and have it stay right there if I can with the tape. I'm just kind of eyeballing the level there. And now I have to wipe off that excess tile adhesive. Alright, well actually I pulled that off. I didn't like it, still felt loose in there, and as I pull it off I can see there wasn't tile adhesive in all the areas, so I put a lot more on. I figure it couldn't hurt if it squeezes out, and this doesn't fit super tight to the wall, so we need that tile adhesive to kind of fill the gaps. And there I can see that has got a lot more tile adhesive squeezing out of the joints, so I can tell it's holding a lot better. So I'm going to tape that in place now. Yeah, that feels a lot more solid. Last time it was wiggling around in there, and now I can tell that it's really held in place a lot better. And I don't even really need tape, but I'm a lot happier with this. I'm glad I took it off the wall and redid it. And now I really have a lot of tile adhesive to clean up in the joints. Oh. And here's the second one going in. Again, I put a lot of tile adhesive on this. But that's holding, and it feels like it's in there pretty solid. Alright, it has been 2 days since I put in the shelves, and I just took the tape off, and it seems pretty solid, although I did see some cracking in the tile adhesive along the edge. I think it's okay because it's being held in with a lot of that tile adhesive. So now I'm going to seal the tile, and I have a sponge, a bucket, and I have 2 different sealers. They came in a kit from Lowe's when we bought them. This is a spray, and this is the heavy duty liquid. So I'm going to put this in the bucket, wipe everything down, and this is really important for our tile because we have porous stone and we don't want any water getting through it. So I might do 2 coats, but I'm going to put it on and then let it sit for a few minutes and then wipe it off. Well, I just got done with the first coat, and it says on the instructions on the back of this one, if you see it absorb, if it dries, put another coat on. So you put a little more in the bucket, put another coat on, and then it says wipe it off. So I think they don't want you leaving the sticky waterproofing on there, so I'll wipe it off with a damp cloth, I think. Okay, I've finished the second coat, and it's been about 5 or 10 minutes, so I filled the bucket with water. I didn't wipe anything down, so there's probably still some residue from the sealer, but I'm just going to wipe the water over everything and then dry it off. Alright, I can tell the sealer's working because it's starting to bead up on there. And the last thing I'm going to do is spray it with this cleaner and resealer. I think it's mainly for cleaning, but I'm just going to coat everything lightly and let it dry, and hopefully that'll seal all the tile. Alright, that's it. And the good thing about this is you can do it once or twice a year just to seal everything and make sure it doesn't leak through the tile. Well, in order to stay consistent with our screwing up every step of this project, we ran into another problem. We bought all new hardware handles for this. Here's the old ones.
and these fit on this metal ridged end piece. And these new handles have a different fitting. It's plastic, it's much bigger, and they don't fit on. In fact, these turn around, several times. The new ones only turn 90 degrees. So we thought we could get an adapter. It turns out we have to replace all the hardware, the fixture, and here. Luckily we have an access in the back room, so I'm going to cut the copper, take all this out. Hopefully the new parts will fit in without us having to trim any of the tile. So it's going to buy some copper tubing, some solder and flux. Luckily there's shut-off valves, so I don't have to turn off water to the entire house, but I don't know, just another problem we ran into. We should have checked before. It would have been much easier to replace this when we had all the tile off, but we didn't look, so we have to do it now.
Okay, here's the tools I think I'm going to be using. On the top is just a thin metal piece of metal, and that's going to be my heat shield. In the middle there, that's going to be the pipe cutter. It's an old one, but it should work. I have the solder and the flux, water-based flux, water-soluble flux on the left, and the blowtorch. So I'm going to cut the pipes. I might have to use a hacksaw, and I also have a crescent wrench right here for tightening the bolts, but that's pretty much it. And I'm going to have a lot of these little couplings and other pipe that I'm going to be combining everything together, but that's the basic tools that I'll be using. Alright, well here's what it looks like behind the shower. I took off this access panel in the closet, and you can see this goes to the shower, this goes to the downspout, the hot and the cold, and luckily I have these two shut-off valves which I just turned off, and you can see the hardy backer we put up and the foam that came through. I do have this part right here, or this tool, and it will allow me to get in all these tight places and cut it off. So I shut the water off. I'm gonna cut up as high as I can, because hopefully I can just buy a new flange, fit it on, and solder around it. So I'm gonna try to get up, and I can always cut it lower if I need to. It doesn't, unfortunately it doesn't go all the way around. I might have to use a hacksaw to cut it because there's not a lot of space. You can see that I can't get all the way around, so I'm gonna have to finish. I got this cut 80% of the way. I'm gonna have to finish the cut from behind, so I'll have to do that with all of these. Okay, so before I take all of the, cut through all the copper in the back, I'm going to come up here and take out these fittings on the front. Already got one out. I just thought this would be smart so we didn't damage the tile as I'm pulling these out from the back. Good thing is I don't need that special socket tool because everything's exposed. And that looks pretty beat up. All the rubber bushings are missing anyways, so I guess it was probably a good thing we changed these. Instead of taking the quick route, we probably should have done it like this when we had the whole stuff off anyways. And this one should just pull right out when we pull the whole unit off. One good thing I found after taking that off is now I have a lot more play and I can get this all the way around. So Luckily I don't have to get the hacksaw in there. I can use the same tool and get that last little bit around the back because I can bend this out of the way now. So I got that cut, got this one cut. I just got to try to cut the top one so I can break it. There we go. And that's that whole unit come off. Alright, I'm getting ready to solder the pieces, and I don't have the whole unit down here because I don't need it yet. This is the fitting that will go to the downspout, and this is another fitting that will go up to the shower head. And I can do these separate so I don't have to do them in the wall. I have 3 more to do upstairs, and those I'll have to do in place with a heat shield behind it. But these I can do right here, so I've cleaned them off. I just have to add the flux, and then we'll start heating it up with the blowtorch and soldering these joints. Alright, that's the first one done, and I got 1, 2, 3, 4 more to go on that one. Okay, all the soldering is done in the back, and now we're going to put on the handles. This just screws on. We were debating whether we should put some silicone caulk behind it or fill in these holes, and we're going to leave it for now. If it does end up leaking, we can always take these off and seal them up. But these just screw on here, and then I think it'll have to be pretty tight. And then these handles will attach, and there's a little Allen wrench right there that holds it in place. So that's how they'll sit. Well, we ran into another problem, and that is when I measured this length, it was when the fixture was sitting further back, and we had to move it forward to get these in. And now it's too far off the wall, and when I have it tightened all the way down, there's still a 1/4 inch gap here. I don't see any way of fixing it other than trying to either cut it and put in a coupling that'll shorten it up, or I could heat this up and try to break this solder joint, cut it, and then put it back on. So I'm either going to cut it here and put a coupling, take a 1/4 inch out, or I'm going to try to get this off. Alright, so my plan to protect the tub from when I'm holding the blowtorch is I'm going to put a couple wet towels down right here. Then I'm going to put this metal plate in between that and another wet towel. So hopefully if it does get hot or something, it won't damage any of the tiles or the tub. So hopefully that'll be good. And I can heat this up with the blowtorch, and then I'm going to try to pull this off with the wrench. So here goes. Alright, that went pretty well. I saw water and steam coming out, but I was able to heat it up, pull this off, so I'm going to cut a 1/4 or a 1/2 inch off, or 3/16 or something, and then it should hopefully fit on there. Okay, let's try this again. I had to file down, I think because there was built up solder inside of this fitting, so I had to file down the outside of that and file the inside of this down. So now it does fit. I'll push that on and then wipe off the excess. And the goal is that there is solder inside of that, and there's flux inside, and when I put the solder in, it'll get sucked into it. So here we go. That should be it. I saw it get sucked up into it, as you can see there. Yep, should be good, and hopefully the piece fits. Well, after spending all that time and going through and redoing the shower tile, we decided to go and do the floor as well. We weren't really sure about the tile floor, but we figured we might as well do the whole bathroom. I've done the same tile in the other small bathroom and the first floor bathroom, so we know what to expect. They're the 18-inch by 18-inch tiles. We got them at Home Depot. They come in a pack of 4. They're $21, so we have enough tile to do this whole floor with the mortar
and everything, and it was $100, so we figured might as well do it. So I'm going to start today, try to rip it all out and get rid of the toilet. So I'm going to do the toilet first. Alright, just like in the other videos before, I drained the tank, I flushed it, and then I took a sponge and got all the water out of the tank and out of the bowl. I turned off the water valve here, I disconnected it, and I removed this portion from the tank. Now I have to remove these two lower bolts, one here, one on the other side, and then we can lift the whole tank up off the wax ring and this caulk seal here. Alright, all the bolts are off. We'll see if it comes up. Yep. Kind of wiggle it off. And there it is. Alright, with the toilet removed, I'm going to start taking out the tile, and I'm going to start in the back and just use a hammer and chisel and work my way around and try to get all this. I'm not exactly sure what's underneath in the basement. The tile was right on the plywood subfloor. In the other room there was the grout or mortar in between. I think this might have grout, but I know we're okay because there is still a 1/4 inch clearance between the floor and the top of the threshold. So even if we put down a 1/2 inch of mortar or thin set and the tile, we'll be flush or a little bit lower than flush. So I think we'll be all set. Well, you can see that it's coming up pretty easy. I did a channel down the center so I can just work my way off of that. And it is on the mortar like the other bathroom upstairs, but luckily I can just put the thin set right over top of this and set the tiles on that. And we do have enough clearance, so we should be all set. You got to remember when you're doing these sides that when you're measuring, it's not just the distance. You got to subtract the 1/4 inch for the gap, and then the 1/4 inch or whatever you're going to use for your gap along the wall. This one's a little bit tight because the wall kind of bows. You can see it's a good gap here and pretty tight here, but it should be all right. Okay, I just got done cutting the piece around the toilet. It was a little bit tricky. I had to use the angle grinder. Luckily the tile hasn't broken yet, I say, because I've had it break when I'm setting it down in the mortar, but so far it cut pretty cleanly. I'm about halfway done. I've worked my way to the back of the room and now I'm working my way out. So far so good. There's some hole tiles, which is nice, and the only problem with these tiles are they break easily. I've had some corners chip out here and some other little chips. These large tiles, there's little filler pieces where they, like right here where they kind of fill in where there was gouges or something, and it'll crack right down the middle of the tile, but we're almost done. Okay, I am all set pre-cutting the tiles. It took about 2 hours maybe.
There's lots of whole piece tiles, which is nice. I don't have to cut them. It did take some time in this back area, especially around that toilet. But everything's cut and in place. I haven't set these middle ones, but everything's looking fine. And I had two different designs for the tile layout. And here's the drawing I had. And I ended up going with this one on the left. This, even though it would be easier with more whole tiles, we didn't like that two little small pieces on the end, one by the tub. So we went with this one. It still has a lot of whole tiles. It wasn't that bad. Pretty easy to cut. And another tip I did, if I turn off the lights, you can see I have this laser line. And this is just a way to help me align that center line so I'm nice and straight. And when I set the tiles for the final time, I can get a nice straight line down the middle and it won't be zigzag. So I'm going to wait till tomorrow to mix up the thin set mortar and set the tiles. Then I'll give it 3 days to set, come back, do the grout, wait 3 more days, and then use the sealer to seal it all off, and we'll put the trim around the outside. One last thing is a problem I saw we might run into, and that is this here. This is the threshold, and it's pretty close to being flush here right now. And we are going to be using this trowel and setting that much thin set underneath. So this tile is actually going to come up this distance here, so it's going to be higher than the threshold. I think I'm just going to put thin set or grout and fill in that, make it a little ramp up, but hopefully it doesn't look too bad and get in the way when people walk in. Here's my first batch. I think I mixed it a little runnier, but I wanted it to spread easily, and that looks like it'll be pretty good. Alright, here's what I've done in the first 20 minutes. I used about half of the bucket, maybe less, but I am using this large half-inch trowel, which is why you use a lot of thin set when you use that bigger trowel. But so I'm going to go mix up another batch and keep going down that way to the door. Okay, I just finished setting the last tile. Here's the bathroom I did. It's approximately, on average, it's about 4.5 wide by 10 long, and I used one entire bag of that 50-pound thin set mortar. I didn't buy the fancy $11 stuff, I just bought the $5 gray mortar. I used the 1/2-inch trowel. It's a 1/2 inch thick, and these are 1/4 inch spacers. Actually, I didn't have 1/4 inch spacers, so I used 2 3/8 inch spacers that I used for the tile in the shower. It's not perfect, but these tiles are so large, when I put in the grout, you'll see the line you won't notice that there's a slight jog in 1 or 2 of the tiles. But the other problem I had was I worked my way to the front, and you can see that gap is larger than that one, and I tried to play around with everything, you know, a little here, a little there, but these were kind of stuck in place, so I'm going to try to fix that with the grout. And I'll be grouting this in 3 days. Well, it's been 3 days. The thin set is solidified. I can see the color's all white. It seems pretty solid. I did end up fixing this joint here in the front. I took the tile out that night, recut it, reset it. So now I'm just going to start pulling all these spacers out, and then I can go mix the grout in the basement, bring it up here, and start grouting all these joints. Let it sit for 10 minutes to haze up a little, and then I can use 3 sponges, wipe everything clean, do it a few more times to get all that haze, and get the grout exactly how it should look, and we should be all ready for sealing 3 days after that.
Alright, so this is what we have left of the grout. It's about 3/4 of a bag, and it's the grout that matches the tile. I've used it for the other shower, the other 2 floors. I'm not going to mix all of it right now. Hopefully I won't need it all, maybe half of this bag. Go up there, do as much as I can. If I need some more, I can mix little batches as I need it. And this grout does not need a lot of water. And this is about the consistency that I like to use. It might be a little bit runny, but I found it's a lot easier to work with. It's kind of like soupy peanut butter. Any thicker and it's a pain to work into the joints. You don't want it too runny, obviously, but that's how I like to mix it. Okay, I'm ready to get started in the back corner of the bathroom, and here's the tools I'm going to use. This is the float, it's rubber. I have these just to get the grout out on the floor. It's going to be the same thing. You're just trying to work the grout into the cracks and get it all the way in until it's pushing out the sides. And these big tiles are nice. They're a lot nicer than the small tiles like I was doing on the shower. This will take a lot less grout to fill in all these cracks. I probably should be using something other than this to get the material out, but it works fine. Okay, so I have some of the grout on the floor, and I like to take this front edge, and I use a lot of the front edge, and you're just working it in to the crack, trying to get it as deep down in. You should see it squeezing out just like that. That's a good sign when it squeezes out like that. So you're working it in and then wiping it clean. Pushing really, I like to push right down on that front edge and then take the material and work your way down. Okay, here is the floor. All the grout is in. It's starting to harden. You can see the haziness start right here. I'm going to quickly go around and try to clean up as much excess as I can. I didn't do the nicest of jobs. You can see there's still a lot of grout, so I'm going to try to get that up now while it's still damp. Another tip is that it's not a bad idea to overfill them or make it flush right now, because when you come by with the sponge, you're going to gouge out a little bit of that. So you don't need that depression right now. You can make it flush, and then when you come through with the sponge, it'll gouge it down a little bit. So I try to make it flush or a little bit high with the grout. All right, you can see all the joints have hazed over except where the grout is thick in the center. So now it's time to wipe that excess grout hazy stuff off. And to do that, I'm going to use 3 sponges. Now I got most of the grout that's on either side of the tile off, and now this is when you can start really kind of contouring the grout. It's still wet, and I'm kind of putting a little bit of pressure, and you'll create that bow in the grout so it's not flush. And then make sure you get anything that's on either side. Sometimes you don't see it till it starts to dry, but you want to get it off as soon as possible. Otherwise you're going to be scraping it with a plastic chisel. Alright, I'm ready for the last step, which is sealing the tile. The grout has set for 3 days. And just like before, I'm using this liquid sealer, heavy duty. I'm going to put that down first, let it dry, it's usually absorbed. I put a second coat. Then I come back with this spray, which I think is like a 2 or 3 times a year spray. I just pour it in the green container in the bucket. One thing I'm going to do differently is, before I used to use a sponge, but it seemed like it absorbed everything and it was a lot of waste, so I'm just going to use white rags and just wipe it on, let it kind of absorb the first coat, wipe it on again, and really get in the grout. And that's another thing, is we noticed that some of the grout on our shower that we did a few months ago was really dark, like it was absorbing water. So I'm going to take some more of the sealer and really try to get in that grout to waterproof it. But that's it. We're not too worried about the floor. It should go fine. Now when you're doing this, what you really want to do is get this grout. You can see how it's white here. You really want to rub that sealer in till you know it's penetrating into that grout. You can see it changed color to dark. And that way you know it's going to seal the grout and it won't get stained easily, because that's what will get stained. The tile should be pretty good. I'm wiping that over, but you really want to make sure that that grout turns a dark color. Alright, I did the first 2 coats with the green heavy duty sealer, and now I'm going to spray the cleaner and resealer on everything and let that soak in. Well, I ran into the same problem with this toilet that I did with the other 2 that I installed. I bought the $6 fancy extra thick reinforced wax ring. I put it on the toilet, and when I go to set it down, I can hear it clunking around. And so that means that that's not thick enough. It should squish down and squish that wax ring out. So I had to go back to the store. This time I just bought the $3 one, not the cheap real thin one. I figured I'll just get the kind of the one in the middle. I think if I ever did this again, I should have done it this time. Just buy 2 of these extra thick ones instead of, for the same price, you get one of these reinforced whatever. They're all the same, they're just wax. I guess it just depends on the thickness, but I should just buy 2 of the extra tall $3 ones at Lowe's. So hopefully I'm gonna have to take this off, put the second wax ring on, right on top of the other one, and this time it should squish down and squeeze all that wax out and seal it properly. Because right now, you can hear it's not sitting on that wax ring, it's sitting on the ground, which means it's not a good seal. So I'll take it off, make sure I don't set it down on carpet or anything, put the second wax ring on, and then set it down over the bolts. Alright, here's the bottom of the toilet, and you can see that it hasn't squished out at all. So I'm going to take this second wax ring, put it right over top of that one, and that should definitely all squish out. So let's go put that back on there. Well, after much hassle, I did get the toilet set by myself on these bolts. Actually, one of the bolts actually slipped down and fell in between the pipe and the wall, so it's somewhere on the ceiling, I guess. Now I just have to tighten it, and this longer bolt I'm going to have to cut with a hacksaw because it's way too long, and then I just have to connect the water line in the internal part of the toilet, and should be all set. Here's the internal part of the toilet. Fits down through there. Then you take the rubber washer and then the nut, screw that on the bottom to lock it in place. And then you take this piece and lock it with this other plastic piece so it doesn't leak. And the last step is just to use silicone caulk. 100% silicone. You can get 2 for $5. Don't buy the $6 ones. You can get these in 2 packs. I just have white 100% silicone, and that's it. Alright, when I'm doing this caulk, I want to make sure that I'm forcing it underneath the toilet too, so it'll give it a little cushion when you sit down on it. It's not sitting right on the stone. Hopefully it's the cushioning with the silicone here. Any gaps right there and in front. The video you just saw was actually recorded 3 years ago, and we're still really happy with how the bathrooms turned out. It makes our house look much more modern. It gets rid of that old 70s kind of feel from when our house was built. It was a lot of work, especially with all the screw-ups along the way, but it's totally doable for an average homeowner that has some of the tools and some of the skills. When we started out, I had never done tile before, but by the 3rd bathroom we knew what we were doing. It went a lot faster and a lot easier. Installing the floor tile and the toilet went much quicker and much easier this time, since it was our 2nd time doing it. We made all the mistakes back when we did our 1st floor bathroom, and this time we knew all the tips and the tricks and doing 2 wax rings to get a good seal on that pipe, so that part went really easily. It was, however, our first time doing shower tile, and we did get a little bit excessive with the caulk and the red guard paint and the foam, trying to seal everything up. But since it was our first time doing it, we really didn't know what we were doing, and we wanted to make sure it was waterproof before we set the tile. And the tile we chose probably wasn't the best choice. It was very porous. It was a porous stone. And one issue we did have 3 years later was some of that red guard paint started to seep through the pores on that tile. We could actually see a little bit of red in the tile, and we're like, I wonder why that's showing through. Well, it's because we sealed it when we originally did it, but we haven't gone back every year and resealed it with that spray. So I think we're just going to scrub it, reseal it with that spray, and we should be good. And of course we can't do any of these bathrooms without having one mistake, and that was with the plumbing and the fixtures. I thought I could just buy new hardware handles and reuse the old plumbing pipe, but we had to replace that whole unit, put the new one in, and I had to do the couplers and solder everything in. But hopefully you know what the problem is, and you can just take your time, work it out, and fix it. But we're still really happy with how the shower tile turned out, the diagonal pattern, and once we clean it up, everything should look great. So my advice to you is expect things to go wrong. If this is the first time you're doing this, you're not going to do it perfectly, and we didn't either. We screwed up on the tile floor and the shower and the toilet. But by the 3rd bathroom, I was doing those all myself, and it went much easier and much quicker. The next thing is expect it to take a lot more time than you originally think. We thought, oh yeah, it'll take a week or a weekend or something like that, and it took a lot more because you have to go to the store and buy stuff you forget, or you have to wait for things to dry, so it takes a lot more time than you originally think. And it also costs a little bit more money than you thought. Even though we had the spreadsheet filled out and we thought we had bought everything initially, you forget, you need 1 more box of tile, or you break a tile, or you need more mortar, so it's going to cost a little more money than you thought. But just make sure you have a plan. Measure everything up, know what you want to do, get dimensions and quantities for everything, fill out the spreadsheet and get an idea of what you need and what it's going to cost. And watch some videos and talk to people who have actually done it and get their opinion on what they forgot and how they screwed up, or tips and little tricks you can do to save you time and do it right, hopefully the first time. So let me know. Hopefully this is helpful, and let me know what you think.
Well, I hope you liked the video you just watched. If you did, feel free to subscribe by clicking the button on this side. You can also check out all the videos I've done, the playlist from things I've built, things I've fixed, home repair, 3D printing, and on this side you can check out a recommended video similar to the one you just watched. And as always, down in the description I'll put a link to my blog, which has more pictures and more information about the video you just watched. Thanks.